Hey Reddit, I'm Nate, and until recently, I thought I had a pretty ordinary life. My wife, Emily, and I have been together for 9 years, married for 6. We weren't perfect, but who is? Life was busy, work, errands, weekend plans, but we always found time for each other. Or so I thought. Last Friday started like any other day. I got up early, made coffee, and left for work while Emily was still asleep. Around lunchtime, I got a text from my best friend, Ryan. The message was strange. Hey, are you coming tonight? It's gonna be fun. Emily's gonna love it. I had no idea what he was talking about. Coming to what? Emily hadn't mentioned anything. So, I replied, what are you talking about? Ryan texted back, it's a surprise for Emily. Don't tell her. Just show up at 8 p.m. You'll see. That should have been my first red flag. Why was Ryan involved in planning something for my wife? I mean, they were friendly, but he'd never gone out of his way to organize something for her. Still, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was one of those group surprises everyone but me knew about. When I got home from work, Emily was already gone. She'd left a note on the counter saying she was meeting up with friends. No details, no time, just that. Another odd thing, but again, I brushed it off. I figured she was out prepping for whatever this surprise was. By 8 p.m., I arrived at the address Ryan had sent me. It was a large house on the nicer side of town, one I didn't recognize. The lights were low, and music was thumping inside. The place was packed. I could see people through the windows, laughing, drinking, and dancing. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. After a minute, I just let myself in. The place was dimly lit with colored lights, and the smell of alcohol and perfume hit me immediately. It didn't look like a surprise party for Emily. It looked, well, wild. People were scattered in corners, whispering, couples getting too close for comfort, and the whole vibe felt off. I started walking through the crowd, looking for Emily. I didn't recognize most of the faces, but a few people gave me odd looks, like they knew something I didn't. That's when I heard her laugh, Emily's laugh, coming from upstairs. My stomach twisted. Why was she upstairs during a party? I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The laughter got louder, mixed with another voice I couldn't quite place. When I reached the top, I noticed a door slightly ajar with light spilling out. And that's when I heard it, a sound that made my heart stop. The sound was unmistakable. Laughter, playful whispers, and something else. My stomach churned as my mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. I pushed the door open slowly, my hands shaking. The room was dimly lit, and it took me a moment to process what I was seeing. There she was, Emily, sitting on the edge of the bed, her dress slightly wrinkled, her face flushed. Next to her was Ryan, shirtless, a drink in his hand, smirking like he had just won a prize. They froze the moment they saw me. Emily's eyes widened in shock, and her mouth opened as if to say something, but no words came out. Nate, she finally managed, her voice trembling. What are you doing here? I stepped into the room, my heart pounding in my chest. What am I doing here? I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Ryan texted me, said there was a surprise for you. Guess I'm the one getting surprised, huh? Ryan leaned back casually, as if this was all some big misunderstanding. Hey man, he started, raising his hands. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like. The audacity of those words hit me like a freight train. I glanced around the room, taking in the disheveled bed, the empty wine glasses on the nightstand, and the way Emily was avoiding my eyes. My fists clenched involuntarily. Explain it to me then, I said, my voice eerily calm. What exactly am I looking at, Ryan? Emily stood up, her hands trembling as she reached for mine. Nate, please. It's not, don't. I stepped back, holding up a hand to stop her. Don't you dare try to spin this. The room fell silent. The muffled sounds of the party downstairs felt like they were coming from another world. My mind was racing, trying to piece together how long this had been going on. Ryan, my best friend. Emily, my wife. The betrayal was suffocating. Emily finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. It was just a mistake. We've both had a lot to drink. It didn't mean anything. Ryan nodded eagerly, like a guilty child agreeing with their parent. Yeah, man. It's not a big deal. Just, heat of the moment. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of the situation was too much to handle. Not a big deal? I said, my voice rising. You think this is nothing? You're my wife, Emily. And you? I turned to Ryan. You were supposed to be my best friend. How long has this been going on? Emily looked panicked now, her eyes darting to Ryan as if she didn't know what to say. Ryan, on the other hand, had the nerve to shrug. Does it matter? Does it matter? Those words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt the anger bubbling up, threatening to spill over. But instead of exploding, I did something that caught both of them off guard. I smiled. You're right, I said, my voice calm and collected. It doesn't matter. They exchanged confused looks as I turned and walked out of the room, shutting the door behind me. I could hear Emily calling after me, her voice desperate, but I didn't stop. I made my way downstairs, weaving through the crowd of strangers, ignoring their curious glances. I needed air. I needed to think. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring up at the stars. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Rage, sadness, disbelief. But one thought stood out above all the others. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stood outside the house, staring into the night, trying to steady my breathing. My heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest, and my mind was replaying the scene in that room over and over again. Emily, Ryan, the disheveled bed. It was burned into my memory like a scar I'd never be able to erase. But I couldn't let this consume me. Not yet. I needed to think clearly, and more importantly, I needed answers. I wasn't the kind of guy to cause a scene, but I wasn't about to let them get away with this either. Not without knowing the truth. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my messages. Ryan's invitation was still there, clear as day. Hey, are you coming tonight? It's gonna be fun. Emily's gonna love it. The text felt like a sick joke now, a cruel punchline to a twisted setup. Was he so confident I wouldn't find out? Or was he just that stupid? Before I could overthink it, the door behind me creaked open, and I heard her voice. Nate, Emily called softly, like she was afraid I'd bolt if she spoke too loudly. Please, let's talk. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I saw her face again, I wasn't sure I'd be able to hold back the tidal wave of emotions threatening to crash over me. Talk about what? I said, my voice steady but cold. How you were upstairs with Ryan while I was downstairs walking into a house full of strangers. Or how you tried to convince me it didn't mean anything. She stepped closer, and I could feel her presence behind me. It's not what you think, she said, her voice shaking. I wasn't. We weren't. I finally turned to face her, and the sight of her almost broke me. Her mascara was smudged, her eyes red from crying. She looked like a mess, and for a split second, I felt a pang of pity, but then I remembered why we were standing here in the first place. Don't lie to me, Emily, I said, my voice sharper now. You're not going to talk your way out of this. I saw you. I heard you. So, just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on? Her lip quivered, and she looked down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. It's not like that, she said quietly. Ryan and I. It was a mistake. It only happened once. I shook my head, letting out a bitter laugh. Once? Do you really expect me to believe that? You were way too comfortable in that room for it to be the first time. Her silence was deafening. She didn't even try to argue. That's when I knew. This wasn't just some drunken mistake. This was something deeper, something planned. I stepped closer, and she flinched, as if my words had more weight than they should. Tell me the truth, Emily. How long has it been? Her voice was barely a whisper now. A few months. A few months. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. While I was working late nights, planning our future, and trying to be the best husband I could be, she was sneaking around with my best friend. It felt like my entire world was crumbling beneath my feet. And you, I said, my voice rising. You let me walk into this house, knowing he'd invited me. What were you thinking? That I wouldn't find out? Her eyes finally met mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them I couldn't quite place. Fear? Regret? Maybe even guilt. I didn't know he invited you, she said. I swear, Nate. I thought you were working late like you always do. I didn't know whether to believe her. Every word out of her mouth felt like a lie, but there was something in her tone, some small, desperate shred of honesty, that made me hesitate. And the party? I asked. What's this about? She hesitated, glancing back at the house as if looking for an escape. It was his idea, she admitted. He said it would be fun, that it would be a surprise. I felt sick to my stomach. Ryan had orchestrated this entire thing, knowing full well I'd walk in on them. Was this his way of rubbing it in my face? Or was he just that arrogant? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. Go back inside, Emily, I said finally. Enjoy your party. I need to think. Nate, please, she started, but I cut her off. Go, I said firmly. We'll talk later. She looked like she wanted to say more, but instead, she turned and walked back into the house, leaving me alone in the cold night air. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, wondering how I'd gotten here, wondering how the two people I trusted most in the world could betray me so completely. But one thing was certain, I wasn't walking away from this without answers. And when I had them, I'd decide what came next. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the quiet streets, the soft hum of the engine the only sound in the suffocating silence. My phone buzzed a few times, calls from Emily, but I ignored them. What could she possibly say to fix this? I needed space, time to think. By the time dawn broke, I found myself parked at a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and old vinyl booths. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the corner, staring out the window, replaying the events of the night over and over. That's when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Emily. It was Ryan. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But then I thought, no, this is my chance. My chance to get the truth from him. I answered, keeping my voice steady. What do you want, Ryan? There was a pause on the other end before he spoke. Nate, man, I'm sorry. I screwed up. Okay? I shouldn't have. It wasn't supposed to go down like that. I clenched my jaw, my grip tightening on the phone. Wasn't supposed to go down like what, Ryan? You weren't supposed to get caught? It's not like that, he said quickly. Look, it wasn't planned. It just happened. You know how these things go. How these things go. I snapped, my voice rising. A few heads in the diner turned toward me, but I didn't care. You're talking about my wife, Ryan. My wife. And you're supposed to be my best friend. How long has this been going on? There was another pause, and I could hear him take a deep breath. A few months, he admitted. It started at that barbecue we had at your place. Emily and I, we got to talking, and one thing led to another. I slammed my fist against the table, causing my coffee to spill. That barbecue. I remembered it clearly. Ryan staying late to help clean up, Emily laughing at his stupid jokes. I'd thought nothing of it. I trusted them. And the party? I asked through gritted teeth. Was that your idea too? Did you plan for me to walk in on you? No, he said quickly. I mean, yeah, I planned the party, but I didn't know you'd show up. Emily said you'd be working late. I thought we'd have time to figure things out. Figure things out? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You mean you wanted time to sneak around behind my back some more? He didn't answer, and the silence spoke volumes. I hung up without another word, my hand shaking as I set the phone down. The betrayal was too much to process. Not only had Emily cheated on me, but Ryan had been orchestrating the entire thing, manipulating situations to cover his tracks. I sat there for a long time, staring into my empty coffee cup, trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront Emily again, to demand answers. But another part of me was too tired, too broken to face her lies. That's when I remembered something. Ryan had mentioned the barbecue. If it had started there, maybe there were other signs I'd missed. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through old photos and messages, looking for anything that might give me more answers. And that's when I found it. A photo from the barbecue, taken by one of our friends. It was a group shot. Me, Emily, Ryan, and a few others. Everyone was smiling, holding drinks, having a good time. But in the corner of the frame, barely noticeable, was a look between Ryan and Emily. A look that said more than words ever could. How had I not seen it before? It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The way they stood slightly too close, the way their eyes met, as if sharing a secret. I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. This had been building for months, right under my nose. And I'd been too blind, or too trusting, to see it. I slammed my phone down on the table, earning a few more curious glances from the other diners. I didn't care. I had all the confirmation I needed. It was time to confront Emily. This time, there would be no room for lies. I paid my bill and left the diner, the morning sun blinding as I stepped outside. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. Emily and Ryan had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now it was time for them to face the consequences. When I got home, the house was eerily quiet. Emily's car was in the driveway, but it felt like no one was inside. My hand hesitated on the doorknob for just a second before I pushed it open. The familiar smell of coffee hit me, and I could hear faint noises coming from the kitchen. She was there. I walked in, my footsteps heavy, and there she was, Emily, sitting at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug, staring blankly out the window. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red and puffy. She'd clearly been crying, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She looked up when she heard me enter, and her face crumbled. "Nate," she whispered, her voice shaky. "You're home." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I dropped my keys on the counter and leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "We need to talk." She nodded, but she didn't meet my eyes. "I know. I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" I said, my voice sharp. "Sorry for what, exactly? For cheating on me? For lying to me for months? Or for getting caught?" Her head snapped up at that, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of anger in her eyes. "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice defensive. "You don't understand." "No," I cut her off. "You don't get to say that. I understand perfectly, Emily. You betrayed me. With Ryan, of all people. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" Her face fell, and she looked down at her mug again. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said quietly. It just did." "Don't give me that," I snapped. "This wasn't some accident, Emily. You made a choice. Over and over again. And you didn't care how it would affect me." Tears started streaming down her face, but I didn't let up. I couldn't. I needed to get everything out. "How long, Emily? How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her hands trembling as she set the mug down. 6 months, she admitted, her voice barely audible. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Of her sneaking around with Ryan while I was clueless. My fists clenched at my sides, and I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Why?" I asked. "Why would you do this to me? To us?" She shook her head, tears falling faster now. "I don't know," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't plan it, Nate. It just happened. He was there for me when you weren't." I felt like she'd slapped me. "When I wasn't?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You mean when I was working late to pay our bills? When I was trying to build a future for us? That's your excuse?" She sobbed harder, but I didn't let her off the hook. "You could have talked to me, Emily," I said. "You could have told me how you felt. Instead, you chose to destroy everything we had." Her hands covered her face, and for a moment, the only sound in the room was her crying. I wanted to feel something, anger, sadness, even pity, but I was numb, completely and utterly numb. Then, she said something that made my blood run cold. "I love you, Nate," she whispered. "I never stopped loving you." I laughed bitterly. "You love me? Is that supposed to make this better? You don't cheat on someone you love, Emily. You don't do this." She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I made a mistake, okay?" she shouted, her voice desperate. "I screwed up, but I still want us. I still want to fix this." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "You think this can be fixed?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Do you really think I can just forget about this? About you and Ryan? She didn't answer, and the silence was deafening. Finally, I sighed and turned toward the door. I need space, Emily, I said. Don't call me. Don't text me. I need time to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. Nate, please, she said, her voice breaking. Don't go. But I didn't stop. I walked out the door and got into my car, slamming the door shut behind me. As I drove away, I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me. Emily's betrayal, Ryan's lies, the destruction of a life I thought was solid. This wasn't over. Not yet. But for now, I needed to get as far away from her as I could. I didn't know where I was driving, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house, not with Emily's lies suffocating me. After an hour of driving aimlessly, I pulled into a motel parking lot. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give me space to think. I checked in, threw my bag onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. How did I not see this coming? I kept replaying the last 6 months in my head, searching for signs. Little things that I had ignored suddenly became glaring red flags. The late nights when Emily said she was out with friends, the times she seemed distant, the way she suddenly became protective of her phone. And then there was Ryan, my best friend, my confidant. I trusted him like a brother, and he betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. I needed answers, but I knew Emily wasn't going to give me the whole truth. If I wanted to piece this together, I'd have to do it myself. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old messages and photos, looking for anything that might give me a clearer picture of how deep this betrayal went. Ryan's text stood out immediately. At first glance, they seemed innocent. Jokes, casual plans, nothing out of the ordinary. But now, with everything I knew, they felt calculated. Like he'd been testing the waters, seeing how much he could get away with. Then, I remembered something. Ryan and I had shared a cloud storage folder for years. We used it to exchange photos from fishing trips, camping weekends, and other random stuff. I hadn't checked it in months, but if there was anything incriminating, it might be there. I opened the folder, my heart racing as I clicked through the files. Most of it was the usual stuff. Pictures of us on a boat, a few videos of Ryan cracking stupid jokes. But then, near the bottom, I found a folder labeled Random. My stomach churned as I opened it. The first few pictures were harmless. Photos of Ryan's dog, a sunset, a barbecue. But then, I saw it. A photo of Emily. She was sitting on a couch I didn't recognize, wearing a dress I'd never seen before. The way she was looking at the camera, at him, made my skin crawl. It wasn't the kind of photo you'd take of a friend's wife. It was intimate, personal. I kept scrolling, my hands shaking as I uncovered more. A text screenshot from Emily saying, "I can't wait to see you tonight, Redheart." Another photo of them together, taken in what looked like a hotel room. And then, a video. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. But I had to know. The video was short, just a few seconds. But it was enough. It was Ryan filming himself in the car, saying, "On my way to see my favorite girl." He laughed, and the camera panned to the passenger seat, where Emily was sitting, smiling at him. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek, giggling as she said, "Don't make me late this time." I slammed the phone down on the bed, my blood boiling. This wasn't just a fling. This was a full-blown affair, and they were brazen about it. They didn't just betray me, they mocked me. They thought they could get away with it because I trusted them so completely. I paced the room, trying to calm the storm inside me. Every part of me wanted to drive to Ryan's house and punch him in the face, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused me. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. If I wanted closure, if I wanted justice, I had to be smarter than that. I sat back down and started taking screenshots of everything. The texts, the photos, the video. If this thing was going to blow up, I needed proof. Cold, hard evidence. And I wasn't going to let either of them deny what they'd done. Once I had everything saved, I opened a blank email draft. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I debated what to do. Part of me wanted to send it to every single person we knew, to expose them for the liars they were. But another part of me wasn't ready for the fallout. Not yet. Instead, I saved the draft and closed my laptop. There was still one more thing I needed to do. Ryan thought he could outsmart me, but he underestimated how far I was willing to go to get the truth. It was time to pay him a visit, and this time, I wouldn't leave without answers. By the time I pulled up to Ryan's house, the sun was setting, casting a blood-orange hue across the neighborhood. His truck was parked in the driveway, a cruel reminder of all the times I'd trusted that vehicle to take us on fishing trips, camping weekends, hell, even to my own bachelor party. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I sat there for a moment, watching the house. It looked so normal, so innocuous. But behind that front door was the man who had shattered my life. I wasn't here to lose my temper or start a fight. I was here for the truth, and to make sure he knew this wasn't over. I stepped out of the car, slamming the door harder than I meant to, and walked up the driveway. The weight of my footsteps echoed in my chest as I climbed the porch stairs. I rang the doorbell and waited. My heart pounded in my ears, but I forced myself to stay calm. After a few seconds, the door opened, and there he was. Ryan stood there in a t-shirt and jeans, holding a beer in one hand. For a brief moment, he looked surprised to see me, but that quickly shifted to something else, guilt. He knew why I was here. "Nate," he said, forcing a casual tone. "What's up, man?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at him, my jaw clenched. Finally, I said, "We need to talk." He stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. Sure. Let's talk." I walked past him into the living room, the place I'd been 100 times before. The couch, the TV, the coffee table littered with magazines. It all felt surreal now, like I was standing in the scene of a crime. He sat down on the couch, setting his beer on the table, and motioned for me to sit across from him. "So, what's on your mind?" I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, and looked him dead in the eye. "Don't play dumb, Ryan. You know why I'm here." His face paled slightly, and he let out a nervous chuckle. "Look, Nate, if this is it's about Emily." I cut him off. "It's about you and her, sneaking around behind my back for 6 months. It's about you lying to my face, acting like my friend, while you were screwing my wife." Ryan's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of panic. "Nate, look, it's not as simple as you think." "Oh, it's not simple?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You mean it wasn't simple when you sent me that text, inviting me to the party where I caught you two together? Or when you planned this whole thing, thinking I'd never find out?" He raised his hands defensively. "I didn't plan for you to walk in on us, okay? That was a mistake. Emily told me you wouldn't be there." I laughed bitterly. "A mistake? That's what you're calling it? A 6-month affair with my wife is a mistake to you?" He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the beer on the table. "Look, man, I screwed up. I know that. But Emily, she's been unhappy for a while. She said you were distant, that you didn't pay attention to her. She came to me because what?" I interrupted. "Because you were there to pick up the pieces? Don't feed me that crap, Ryan. You didn't do this out of concern for her. You did this because you wanted her." He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." "But it did," I said, my voice cold. "And now, I want the truth. How long have you been planning this? Was it just about Emily? Or was it about me too? Did you enjoy making a fool out of me?" Ryan hesitated, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for the right words. Finally, he sighed and said, "It wasn't about you, Nate. I swear. I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened." "Stop saying that," I snapped. "Nothing just happens, Ryan. You made a choice. Over and over again." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I could see the guilt and shame written all over his face, but it wasn't enough. No apology, no excuse would ever make this right. Finally, I stood up, towering over him. "You've destroyed everything, Ryan. You and Emily both. And you know what the worst part is? I trusted you. I trusted you more than anyone." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Nate, save it," I said, cutting him off. "I'm done listening to your lies. You'll hear from me soon enough." Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind me. As I got back into my car and drove away, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The betrayal was unbearable, but now, I had all the pieces. The truth was out, and it was time to decide what came next. This wasn't just about Emily or Ryan anymore. This was about taking back control of my life. And whatever I chose to do, I knew one thing for sure. They wouldn't see it coming. I drove away from Ryan's house feeling strangely calm, like the storm inside me had finally passed. But it wasn't peace, it was focus. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Ryan and Emily thought they could walk all over me, but they underestimated me. They thought I'd just crumble, retreat into myself, and let them move on unscathed. They were wrong. I spent the next few days meticulously planning. Every detail, every step, carefully thought out. This wasn't about revenge, at least, not in the way they'd expect. It was about truth, about exposing them for who they really were and reclaiming my life. First, I gathered everything I had, the texts, the photos, the videos. I compiled it all into a folder and uploaded it to a private drive. I wasn't going to act impulsively and burn bridges just yet, but I needed insurance. If either of them tried to spin this in their favor, I'd have undeniable proof. Next, I reached out to a lawyer. I wanted to know my options, not just for a divorce, but for protecting myself financially. Emily had no idea I was steps ahead of her. She didn't know that I'd already locked her out of our joint accounts, or that I'd started redirecting my paycheck into a new account under my name. The night I confronted her was like stepping into a theater where I'd written the script. Emily was sitting on the couch when I walked in, her eyes red and swollen from days of crying. She looked up at me, her face a mix of guilt and hope. "Nate," she started, her voice trembling, "I'm glad you're home. Can we please talk? I want to make this right." I set my bag down and crossed my arms. "Make this right?" I repeated, my tone icy. "You don't get to fix this, Emily. You made your choices. Now it's time to face the consequences." She flinched, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I know I hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I made a terrible mistake, but I love you, Nate. I want to save our marriage." I stared at her, the woman I'd loved for nearly a decade, and felt nothing but emptiness. "Love?" I said, shaking my head. "You don't love me, Emily. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have betrayed me with my best friend." She broke down, sobbing into her hands. "It wasn't like that," she said between gasps. I didn't know how to tell you I was unhappy. I was scared, Nate." "Scared?" I shot back. "So instead of talking to me, you decided to destroy everything we built together? You decided to humiliate me?" She didn't answer. She just sat there, broken and defeated, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I've made my decision," I said finally, my voice firm. "I'm filing for divorce. I've already spoken to a lawyer." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. "No, Nate. Please," she begged. "Don't do this. We can work through this. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever it takes." I shook my head. "It's too late for that, Emily. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." She reached for me, but I stepped back, her touch feeling foreign and unwanted. "I'll be staying at a friend's place until this is finalized," I said. "You can stay here for now, but don't think for a second that I'll forget what you've done." Her sobs echoed through the house as I turned and walked away, grabbing the bag I'd packed earlier. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me in that house. Nothing but memories of what could have been. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief. This wasn't the end I'd envisioned for my marriage, but it was the start of something new, something better. And while Emily and Ryan would have to live with the weight of their betrayal, I was free. Free to rebuild. Free to find happiness. Free to move forward. And as I watched the house disappear in my rearview mirror, I knew one thing for sure. I'd never let anyone take my trust for granted again. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, calls with my lawyer, and long nights spent reflecting on what my life had become. There were moments of anger, moments of sadness, but more than anything, there was a growing sense of clarity. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control. Emily tried reaching out multiple times. Calls, texts, even showing up at the place where I was staying. Each time, I ignored her. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice, and I had made mine. My lawyer made it clear that everything was moving in my favor, especially since I had gathered so much evidence. Emily's pleas to work it out only seemed more hollow with each passing day. Ryan, on the other hand, had gone silent. Mutual friends told me he'd been keeping a low profile, likely out of fear of running into me. He'd lost more than just my friendship. Word had spread, and his reputation was in shambles. A small part of me took satisfaction in knowing that the world now saw him for what he truly was. One evening, I decided it was time for closure. I sat down at my laptop and composed an email, attaching all the evidence I'd collected. I didn't send it to everyone, just a select few people who mattered most, including Ryan's fiancée. Yes, it turned out he'd been engaged the entire time. The hypocrisy of it all was staggering. The email wasn't vindictive, it was the truth. I laid everything out clearly and calmly, letting the evidence speak for itself. Once I hit send, I felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't trying to ruin their lives. I was simply making sure they couldn't keep lying. The fallout was swift. Ryan's fiancée left him immediately, and Emily moved out of the house shortly after the divorce papers were finalized. I let her keep most of the furniture and belongings. I didn't want anything that reminded me of our life together. For the first time in months, I felt free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, and the weight of a broken marriage. I started focusing on myself, reconnecting with old friends, picking up hobbies I'd neglected, and even exploring new opportunities at work. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. One day, while I was sitting in a coffee shop, an older man struck up a conversation with me. He told me a simple piece of advice that stuck with me: pain is inevitable, but misery is optional. Choose to grow from it. That's what I did. I grew. I healed. And while the scars of betrayal would always be there, they were a reminder of my resilience. A reminder that I could survive anything. As for Emily and Ryan, I heard they eventually drifted apart. Whatever they thought they had clearly wasn't strong enough to withstand the consequences of their actions. But that was no longer my concern. They were just a chapter in my story, one I had finally closed. The future felt uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it also felt full of possibility. And that was more than enough for me.